Quickly before we get into this video, I am launching a second channel with my good buddy Noah King. You can check it out right there. We are going through the AFI's top 100 films and doing deep dive reviews of each and every single one. It's going to be a really good time, and if you'd like to see me finally talk about some non-sci-fi fantasy stuff, it's the place to go. And also, you know Noah because he's been in a couple of my videos. The guy's great and hilarious. He's one of the greatest people I know.
Into the video.
So the Wheel of Time show has been out and consumed by the masses, and reactions range pretty widely. I'm on the it was slightly above average, but I expected more camp, but it's been fascinating to see many people think it's the worst thing ever, and others say it's the exact adaptation they wanted. But one thing nearly all fans can agree on is there were a surprising number of changes, and I can't get into each and every single one.
That would be impossible!
But there are a few that definitely interest me, and I want to speculate on why those changes were made and what it could mean for future seasons. Now, the biggest change that stands out the most to the forefront to me is the inclusion of Logain in a much more drastic way. Minor spoilers for the first book, which if you consume the first season, you're fine. But Logain does not play nearly as prevalent a role in that book. In fact, I don't think he has a line of dialogue, he just laughs. Now we see that scene recreated in Tar Valon instead of Camelin, which is another change we'll get into, but amping up his character here and spending quite a bit of time narratively on his exact positioning is one of the changes I actually like. Not only because Logain is one of the most interesting characters from the book, but it's a really good excuse to explain a lot of the world building and political elements for the Wheel of Time. First of all, the idea of a false dragon allows you to get into what exactly the dragon is and how certain people can rally to them and see them as the potential chance to beat the shadow. Did the show fully utilize that angle? Yes and no. I assume we're going to see it even more so in season 2, which again would be Logain being amped up. And upon rewatching, the performance of Logain is one of the stronger ones throughout the entire season. I really like how he's coming across so calm, cool, and collected, pretty much until he's stilled. Then he's trying to manipulate the Aes Sedai into killing him and doing all this stuff to just get his life over with, demonstrating just how horrific gentling is for men who can channel. This one change is very indicative of the justification for a lot of the changes we saw from Eye of the World. Now, I want to get into another one that I hinted at before, and that is the shifting from Camelin, a city within the country of Andor, the first book actually goes to Tar Valon. This was something that I think on paper probably did make a lot of sense, and did within the show allow a lot of explanation for the Aes Sedai and who they are. But I personally still would have liked to see our party go to Camelin and maybe just populate that city with a plethora of Aes Sedai to still hit on a lot of the points we touch here, and then maybe move the trial of Logain to the next season. Because personally, and I don't know the plans for season 2, so I'm going off of conjecture, it did seem like the show front-loaded a lot of Aes Sedai politics, and that ended up detracting from the overall narrative of the characters and allowing them to have more agency, because once they were in Tar Valon, they really didn't have too much to do aside from wait around for Moraine. Especially because Camelin itself really is a pillar of the series. It's a city we constantly go back to, and in terms of the shifting nations, Andor itself is one of the largest and strongest nations within the Westlands, the continent all of this takes place in. So getting less of that up front, I feel like means there's going to have to be ground covered that maybe is even greater than what we gain from going to the White Tower early on. Though if they take away Andor being one of the center points for the entire continent, I will be very surprised and a little disappointed. I love Andor. And so for my first major prediction based off of the changes we've seen so far, due to the fact that we're not in Camelin and we aren't even introduced to Mordaze here, I do not think the plotline, keeping it spoiler free, we see with her in the books will play out at all. I think it'll be entirely removed, and that's why we're seeing a lot of the villainous White Cloak activity to the forefront of the narrative earlier on, because a lot of the stuff that happens in the books to really establish them as evil through her plotline is going to be removed. And instead we're going to get another couple of characters that are introduced in Camelin, obviously in season 2. That's what I'm thinking so far, and to be perfectly honest, Mordaze's plotline is something that can be kind of easily just pulled on out and it leaves me wondering what's going to happen with that character, as well as a few other very powerful evil characters that are connected to him. So that's my first major piece of speculation. Due to what we've seen in Season 1, I do not think we are getting more gays at all in terms of a major player like we see in the books here for the show. Another major change that happened here is the power scaling for the Aes Sedai. We see 3 different battle scenes to really justify exactly how powerful Aes Sedai are. The first one with Moiraine and Land against all of the Trollocs, where we see she is really straining herself to take on what seems to be 100 or so Trollocs. The number is not exact because they're scattered throughout the village and we never see like every single Trolloc in one location. We do get a large group, but it's not confirmed or denied if that's all of them, and a few of them have been killed up to that point. Rough estimate, I'd say 80 Trollocs, but it could be greater than that, I don't know. And we also know Moiraine is one of the stronger channelers of the White Tower, so that is the absolute upper limit of a extraordinarily powerful Aes Sedai with the best warder the White Tower has to offer, because Lan absolutely is that. The next battle scene is an entire army attacking many Aes Sedai within Logain's camp. Now, it is justified that these Aes Sedai are exhausted, continually having to shield Logain. None of them are at 100%, and it's why the army is able to get close to them. I feel like that was well enough communicated, though for new viewers who do not know as much about channeling as book readers, they probably had no idea. Which is a criticism I wish I had gotten into even more so in my season review. They needed to communicate channeling earlier on better to new viewers. It's one of the biggest selling points of the series, and almost everyone I know who has not read the books, who has watched the show, does not understand how the magic systems work. Season 2, I hope. But okay, roughly a dozen Aes Sedai versus a full army. They're tired. It seemed about even, which works with what we saw Moiraine earlier. But the major power scaling shift comes in the final example of just how powerful channeling can be. And it seems to be amping up how powerful Egwene and Nynaeve are, because we see a circle made. And with comparing it to the last circle that was shown of the tired Aes Sedai who are barely able to gentle Logain, and it seems to be pushing them to their upper limits, we now see someone who is tower trained. This person wasn't powerful enough to become Aes Sedai, but they are trained like one, taking Egwene and Nynaeve's ability and wiping out an army that is thousands strong. Wow. Now, Egwene and Nynaeve are insanely powerful in the books. Are they powerful enough to do this in a circle with someone who is roughly tower trained? I don't think so, at least not this early on with no magical items boosting them. What this means for Rand later on, who of course is revealed to be able to channel in The Dragon Reborn at the end of Season 1, I got no idea, because he on his own is supposed to be the most powerful channeler, and then he is also going to get magical items to enhance his ability to channel. So are we going to see the show just take channeling to all new highs? I don't know, but this moment did also feel like a bit too much power. I was afraid they were going to power down everyone to save on budget, but what we saw here was them just cranking it to an 11, and whoa, we do not see a display like that for channeling in the books for the first book, for sure. My biggest fear for this is, one, the scene was not edited extremely well, and the CG for it seemed kind of rough. We now know, due to things that have come out about the show, this is largely COVID related because they couldn't get Trolloc actors back and they had to have the actors go through all these protocols, so it's understandable why it looked that way. But that's not even my concern. Now that we've seen displays on that level, what's really left to surprise us later on? Either the show is going to go to just levels of channeling early in the series that are mind-blowing, or we're just going to see stuff continually hit that level and it's not going to be quite as impressive. Personally, I would have rather seen a really intelligent usage of channeling at a high level to resolve this conflict. Maybe instead of just waves and waves of electricity, something done that causes an avalanche, something done to wipe out the army indirectly, which is something we see continually throughout the series. You don't always need to just have raw power. An intelligent use of channeling to cause something naturally to happen could be just as effective. I actually went back to check to make sure there was no thunderstorm already happening in the scene, and there appears not to be, which could have been a cool way to actually justify, no, they're not creating all this lightning, the storm's already there and they're just pulling it out as quickly as they possibly can, maybe adding to it. But unfortunately, no, that's not there, because I think that actually could have pretty well solved the justification for the power level we're seeing on display. And continuing on the note of channeling, we have seen a simplification of channeling. It is made very clear in the books that yes, Sometimes people can do something in the heat of the moment that would be a weave they are not familiar with, but usually it ends up draining them immensely, and it's something that is as rare as like a shiny Pokemon. It's not something that's going to happen frequently. There is a other side of this where there are people who subconsciously do stuff before they even learn they can channel, but those aren't really on the level of like massive feats of channeling. They're like slight healings that are inadvertent or, you know, telling the weather, the future, small things on those lines. Here at the very end of the season, we see Egwene heal a burnt out Nynaeve. That is just a level of healing that is not even accomplished by like the most experienced yellows, the Aja that is focused on healing. I really hope season 2 does some backpedaling on that scene to make it less of an insane feat for Egwene. And then the final huge change I want to touch on is actually one that I have gotten a little more positive on rewatches for season 1 of The Wheel of Time, and that's going to be the handling of the actual conclusion when it comes to Rand. There is some funkiness to editing and some character choices here that do bug me a bit, but when comparing it to the conclusion of Eye of the World in the book, I actually think it does a way better service supporting the narrative on a series level than we get from Eye of the World, because Eye of the World kind of weakens a couple Forsaken to make them feel like, okay, are the Forsaken not that big a threat, which is a continual problem throughout the books. The Forsaken just kind of feel not that dangerous.
Real quick, I'm going to be talking about something that's actually a bit of a spoiler, so if you'd like to avoid that for the first couple of books of The Wheel of Time, jump to this timestamp. I originally didn't think it was a spoiler because Amazon had it on their website for the show, but they've taken it down, so apparently it's a spoiler, so skip to that time code for the first few books. Bye!
Whereas the show has only utilized one of the Forsaken, and they are taken out, but with the small smirk we see, it kind of leaves this feeling of fear in the viewer where you're like, oh my god, the Forsaken are powerful enough that, no, this person was just toying with, judging the power of Rand. They're not taken out at all. We aren't seeing a Forsaken just killed outright. Big improvement in one angle from the book, in my opinion. And of course, the presentation of Ishamael is wildly different from the book. In the books at this point, 1, he's not really there at this giant conclusion at the end. 2, he's raving mad in the books. He's just kind of spewing all these strange observations, stories that make no real sense upon a first reading of the book, and in the show those are taken away, which I very much so understand why they would just serve to confuse the viewer at this point, but it is a little disappointing as a reader because I really love Mad Ishamael. I think it's fascinating to see.
And spoiler for actually the last book in The Wheel of Time, so jump to this time code if you'd like to avoid it. 3, 2, 1, go. The ending of the Eye of the World actually now directly reflects the ending of A Memory of Light, having this showdown of false realities with a figure from the shadow. And this actually makes me speculate that the show was going to hyper focus on the corruption and dark turns that Rand goes through, because this guy goes through the emotional gambit, and I think the show is trying to set up that we, the viewer, see him passing now, so when it happens again, we'll be so unsure of Rand's character that we're going to actually be a little conflicted on whether or not he would accept something like this. So, hey, we may even see a darker path for Rand than we see in the books if they're trying to set up a payoff where they're doing a reflection of what we see him at the beginning, a way to go arc to arc and having the viewer be unsure.
And then there is the final change in this moment that I can't really judge and scares me as a viewer, but again, I can't judge it because I don't know the ramifications or where they're taking this narratively yet, and that is the decision to gentle Moraine, or at least have her shielded to such an insane extent she cannot touch the source, and it's tied off in a way where she feels like she's gentled. Now, for viewers who do not know what I'm talking about, if you are gentled, that is what's happening to Loghain. He is no longer able to touch the power, period. He is severed from it. Jordan actually kind of referenced this being similar to a man being neutered. It was largely the inspiration, gentling, gelding. You can look into it. That's what Jordan was going for. Whereas shielded just means someone has put a block between you and your ability to channel that you can theoretically break, especially once they tie it off. That just takes a ton of time and effort. You can't really break a shield that's actively being held by the person who put it in with the power, like they were doing with Loghain, where multiple Aes Sedai constantly had to hold the shield. But once it is tied off, maybe a Forsaken's just doing it in such an incredible way that Moraine has no idea how to break the shield. But either way, this is a change for Moraine that I'm kind of just left as a viewer wondering at. It's a very bold decision to veer away from the books in this way, and it just kind of leaves me wondering. And now I'm like counting all the times that are important where Moraine channels in the series and how they're going to handle that if they do maintain that she is not able to channel. So let me know in the comments down below what you think has actually been done to Moraine here, and also let me know some other changes you'd like to hear my thoughts on in the comments down below, because this is all stuff that after watching the first season and rereading Eye of the World again, I'm just left speculating about. And of course, if you would like to check out a new channel with me and my good buddy Noah King, the link for that video is going to be right down there. Like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here. Have a good one, y'all. Peace.